Okay, so welcome back to the next session. Hope you had a good coffee and a good break, very important for conferences. So next session will be about emergent technologies. We have 3 talks where we want to have a look through future. And the first talk will be by Joachim Szepicki, nearly perfect, talking about shapefile and how we can switch from shapefile maybe to GeoPackage, whether it's a good option and it's time to do so. Afterwards we will have GeoServer talk by Andrea Aimé. He couldn't do it yesterday, so he will do it now after the first talk. And then we will have George with a long name afterwards. You can tell us about it later, about PyGeoRP and how you can go towards Python using Python RP in the web. And I'm quite excited about this nice session we will have and hope you enjoy. So Joachim.
Thank you, Astrid. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, shapefile. Who is using shapefile? Boo, shame on you, all of you. So let's start with this eye-opening talk, because yeah, I hope that after this talk there will be much few hands than they were now. I believe that shapefile is really one of the first things which is happening on today's geoinformatics. But let's remain positive. Maybe you should pay attention to yeah, not so new anymore, but for some of you still new format called GeoPackage. I would like to give you some intro to this format as well. First, let's talk about shapefile, or SRI shapefile. It's a file-based format designed for storing of geospatial vector data. Do you know how old it is? How many? 30. It isn't that bad. We celebrate 20 years today because it was released, the specification was released on July 1998. Well, I believe that this age qualifies shapefile to well-deserved retirement. It has proved that some features of the shapefile are not suited for today's geospatial problems. And I would like it to show it to you on my personal case. I was working for a company called OSGeo. You might not heard about it yet. Maybe you heard about MapTiler or OpenMapTiles. They are closely connected. And one of my tasks was I was working on a script which was converting raster data to vector data. The data set was land cover. And as a result, I had to do a map, a world map for maximum zoom scale, and it had several millions of features. And well, I didn't think much about it. I did it like half a year ago. I just took first available format for GDAL, OGR, which was of course shapefile. It was a natural choice. And I was surprised that after several days of calculations, the script no longer was able to add new features to the dataset. After checking documentation, I found out that the limit is 2 gigabytes. You can't make shapefiles bigger than 2 gigabytes. GDAL can do 4 gigs, but I still hit that number as well. Somebody's calling? Sorry. So this was my breaking point. I quit using shapefile. And I was actually I was saying like maybe 2 years ago that I will quit using shapefile. This was my breaking point. Since then, I no longer use shapefile. And I started a web page. I wanted to call it Kill the Shapefile by it. I remained positive. So kill the shapefile by switching from shapefile. And that means a community of other users, we started to collect use cases and features why shapefile is bad format and why you should probably consider to use some other format for the use case of data transfer. Let's talk about, the web page currently has 12 contributors. You can be one of them. You can find it on GitHub, of course, and you can do all the homeworks we did, all the tests I will be presenting here by your own. Let's round up some positive of the shapefile in the first place. Let's remain positive. Shapefile is, by and large, the most supported vector format in every software package. Usually it's the last possibility if you want to share some data with someone. Usually the last format which is always working is, fallback format is shapefile, if everything else fails. Shapefile was specified by SRI, bad proprietary software vendor, but luckily the specification itself is very open. There are no restrictions for you if you wanted to implement it, and this is also the reason why shapefile is so widely accepted. It's good enough for most of the use cases. I don't know how many of you ever created shapefiles of size 2 gigs or 4 gigabytes. So yeah, he did. Thank you, I'm not alone. But yeah, I believe we will agree that for most of the use cases, shapefile is like good enough. Shapefile has inner index, and that speeds up reading of the data, and that works pretty well. Especially compared to some text-based data formats. It's very efficient, very small. If you tried to convert shapefile to GML or shapefile to JSON, you know what I'm talking about, or GeoJSON. Now, that would be the positives. There are some few, not so many, but there are some. So let's have a look on the dark side of shapefile. Number one, everybody knows that it is a multi-files format. Everybody knows that if you want to share a shapefile with someone, you need to send at least 3 files: the SHP, SHX, and DBF. SHP contains geometry, SHX the spatial index, and DBF the attribute table. But every software package adds a custom file suffix. So you all know that if you are sharing the data with some users and in the group, then the number of files you are adding to the emails is growing, and you are afraid to delete a single one of them. So instead of having to share one file via some web service or via email, you have to send multiple files. Sometimes you zip them, but some of you do tar them. And you have no idea how this makes life complicated to a software developer if I have to write a service which is supposed to consume shapefiles, and I have to take into consideration, okay, will I make 3 input fields for SHP, SHX, and DBF file, or will I put just one field and write it has to be zipped or tarred, but then I have to write a business logic to know which format, zip format I'm using. It's too hard. Another issue, maximum length of an attribute name is 10 characters. It may look enough for most of the use cases, but this is a concrete example we have in Czech Republic. We have one of the so-called base registers is one of the biggest one in Czech. It's called RUJAN, which means Register of Land Identifications and Addresses. It's National Land Registry published as open data. And there are several attributes which I tried to translate as far as possible to English, more or less, as far as I'm able to. What I want to demonstrate is that this basic data set has maybe half of the attributes, maybe more, which do not fit into this 10-character limit. Even such basic attribute as transaction ID, which is on your left-hand side lower. It has 11 characters. In English, it has 13 characters, transaction ID, just like that. If you try to convert data to shapefile, you all know that GDAL tries to cut the names, but the result is not good enough for me. Another limit. you can have at most 255 attributes in the attributes table. Again, this looks okay or enough for some of the use cases, but there are some applications when you simply need to have more attributes in the attributes table, and this will not fit. What will you do then? Shapefile has only flat or supports only flat data structure. This is another limit. For some of the real-world applications, this is enough, but sometimes, even GML supports 3 data types, to say, more complicated data types. And if you want to incorporate relations and more normalized data structure, shapefile is not good enough. Shapefile supports only 4 data types. We can have float, integer, date, and character set. But character set can't be longer than 255 characters again. That means you can't put really long texts or documents in it. Apparently, we are missing support for some data types. We are usually replacing them by using numbers, like Boolean, for example, is missing. Or big integers. You can't have 2 long identifiers. Again, map of parcels of any of the country will never fit into shapefile because of the identifiers will not fit into the integer data type. You have to use big integers. Unknown character set. There is no single official way how to define a character set. In OpenGeo Labs, where we are working, sometimes we get really once a half a year, we get an email. How do I identify, or how do I find out which character set the shapefile I just got is in? For Europeans, historically we used the encoding Windows 1250 or ISO 8859-2 for East Europeans, by the way. Luckily, today we have everywhere a UTF-8, so this is much easier, much nicer. But still, you don't know in which character set your shapefile, your attributes are encoded in, and maybe you don't know that according to the specification, it is assumed that shapefile uses ISO 88591. The Western European languages ISO encoding. That means that it is not suitable for half of the European languages, and it also means that if you are using Windows encoding, you are doing it wrong. I was already mentioning the 2 gigabyte size limit. For some libraries, as I said already, GDAL can store or save even 4 gigabytes in a shapefile. But then you might face some interoperability problems. What it looks like, this leads to a technique that some of you may split the one dataset into multiple shapefiles and then create indexes from other shapefiles, of course. And instead of having to manipulate 3 files, you have to manipulate with 6 or more files. And the solution is easy, use other format. Yeah. I'm constantly, myself, in my use cases, I'm constantly facing the need to have a possibility to write into the geometry more different geometry data types. So, for example, to have definition points along with polygons. This is not possible with shapefiles. With shapefiles, you always have to stick to one geometry. And this is, by the way, also a lie. This is not true. But I will talk to you about this later. There is a very limited support for 3D. Another issue is shapefile does not contain projection definition. You have to add another file again. But again, you can never be sure in which format it is, whether you are using SRI, well-known text, or maybe Proj4, maybe some other. Those would be a list of the problems we have right now on switch2shapefile.org. I hope you add some more as well, but I doubt you will find any other. Still, one new colleague, one new committer to the page found another one, which is one of my favorite. The problem is that if a shapefile defines or claims that the data are polygon format, you still have to iterate through all the features to find out whether some of them might be multi-polygon. Multi-features are not defined on a global level, they are defined by a single feature. So if you are really iterating through all the data, please make sure that you know what you are working with. This is a nice one, I have to say. That's it. Shapefile is bad, okay? You get it? What shall we do about it? Maybe fix the shapefile. Fix the shapefile.org. I believe the domain is still free, and I believe also that it will be free for a long time. Here would be a list of my features I would expect from the future shapefile. Why I'm stick to the word shapefile. Shapefile is a very universal format. Everybody knows what we are talking about, right? So how should the future shapefile look like? It should be an open format which everybody can easily implement with no license restrictions. It has to be able to handle complicated data structures, overcome some limits of shapefile, like number of attributes, number of characters, stuff like that. And it should be mostly, of course, exchange format. Therefore, it has to be reasonably big and fast in terms of compression of the data. Here's a list of some candidates, potential replacement for the shapefile. We just cut out the CSV and OGC-KML. Some people liked to use them for some reason in the past, but I don't believe this is the way we should go. I start with Specialite. It builds on top of SQLite engine, and for most of the application, it seems to be sufficient format. Why not? Another candidate would be GML. You know it. It is possible to use it for very complex model structures or data structures. I personally dislike the fact that it is built in XML. It has some advantages, I can see them, but still this leads to big files and it can be very tricky to process. 4 means 5 seconds or minutes? Minutes, thank you. Okay, some people ask, why don't you use GeoJSON? It's so popular, everybody uses it. It's so great format. Really, like, it is expected that GeoJSON uses WGS84 only, coordinate system, of course. There is zero support for indexing. The files are so big you can't transfer them. This is really not what we want. Finally, we are approaching to OSGeo-package. And I believe this is the best way this is the best format for shapefile of the future, for the universal exchange format for geospatial data of the future. It builds on SQLite, file database, and OGC standard, and there is a possibility to write some extensions. I made some comparing between shapefile and GeoPackage on my laptop, on the old one, not on this one, and I used a data set of Netherlands polygon layer from OpenStreetMap. It has 3.3 gigabytes of data, and all the tests are, of course, available on GitHub, so very short. As a first test, the size of the data, the GeoPackage made it under 3 gigabytes, shapefile slightly over 3 gigabytes, GML, yeah, no comment, and GeoJSON is slightly more efficient. So they are comparable. But then I wasn't able to perform any other tests with GML and GeoJSON because my computer simply wasn't able to handle those two text-based formats. So here we go, OGR info. So read all the data sequentially. And it took about 250 seconds for both of the formats. Even shapefile seemed slightly faster. Reading metadata, shapefile seems to be much faster format. It took over 3 seconds just to open the data and read with OGR info the metadata. Same applies for looking for the feature using feature ID. Again, it seems that it takes a while for OGR to open GeoPackage, but then it is fast. But we get slightly different result if we are applying a spatial filter, because GeoPackage made it in 0.1 second, while shapefile needed 17 seconds. So the point goes to a GeoPackage, and same applies again, searching for the data using database where condition, where GeoPackage made it within 7 seconds, while shapefile needed 40 seconds. What's this? And that's it. Those are all my measurements. I hope you will add others. So the result, GeoPackage seems slightly more efficient in terms of size, and it seems to be slower in terms of metadata queries, but it's significantly faster when you apply complex spatial and attribute queries. Where is OGC GeoPackage already implemented? Everywhere. Look at the implementations, but this is what we made for QGIS 3. You may know, I'm finishing, that for QGIS 3, GeoPackage is the default format. If you create a new file, it will be GeoPackage unless you tell otherwise. Same applies for GraphGIS and GDAL. So now all these three C-based projects do support shapefile and GeoPackage at the first place. Luckily, in the next stable version, you will get always GeoPackage as output, never shapefile. Yeah, one of the official extension is example of the QGIS styles. They can be stored directly in the database. And to conclude, one more time. GeoPackage is file-based format built up of SQLite with raster data support as well. I didn't discuss that. And with extensions, possible extensions in the future. And your software probably already supports it. You just have to use it. So I hope now you are all convinced. Next conference we bring the t-shirts as well. Who is using shapefile now? Nobody? Thank you. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so thank you, Joachim, for the great presentation. I think we're all convinced now and go for GeoPackage. So are there any questions here in the audience?
Hey, we have a mic.
There's a... Okay. So there's a question there. Speak out loud and we will...
Someone?
It's nice having it.
Do you have some idea of how can I elegantly export GeoPackage files from PostGIS databases without throwing them through a GIS system and then converting them? Something like PGSQL to GeoPackage?
Like OGR to OGR?
Not sure, I'm asking, it's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
OGR to OGR.
Perfect, thanks.
It does one table at a time. I don't know.
One table is one layer, so maybe...
I believe that you can save more layers in GeoPackage. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there is a one-shot export tool that takes the PostGIS database and turns it
Like
into
dump.
a GeoPackage. Yeah, dump.
So even is here maybe? And
No
Thorsten?
idea.
I had a question about the performance graphs, because I did quite some work of GeoPackage optimization in GeoServer, but I got different results. In GeoServer, we made a GeoPackage as fast as PostGIS, but the shapefile is like twice as fast in some use cases. So did you have a spatial index when you make the spatial searches in the shapefile? The QIX or whatever?
Nothing what wouldn't be a standard part of the shapefile.
Okay, but OGR supports it.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Okay.
But please go to GitHub and fix the tests.
Okay, any more questions?
Oh, you have to go farther. We have to move, sorry. I will be here.
Okay, so now it's time for Andrea to talk about GeoServer. It's great that we can have you here now today to
It's
hear
great
the
to have you here.
presentation
Do you
again.
want this computer as well?
So your colleague was very great presenting it, but okay.